Hello, welcome to our big history special. Today, we have 6 great stories for you. We will talk about George Washington and the Statue of Liberty. You will learn how the dollar became famous. We will explore Hollywood and the story of Apple. Finally, we will look at the life of Charlie Chaplin. This is perfect English speaking practice. Listen carefully and improve your English communication skills. Let's begin our journey through American history.
Today we will talk about a man whom absolutely everyone knows. Even if you have never been to the USA, you have surely seen his face. Take an ordinary $1 bill. Look at the serious face with tightly closed lips. This is George Washington. He was the first president and the main founder of the United States. But what was he really like in everyday life? Was he always so strict and such a perfect hero? Today I will tell you his real and very lively story. We will learn about his fears, his big mistakes, and his honest victories. George was born on a winter morning in 1732. He was born in a place called Virginia. Now, Virginia is a very rich and modern American state. But in those distant times, there was no country called the USA. The land where George lived was only a small part of the British colonies. Huge territories around belonged to France and Spain. The world in America was divided between the great empires of Europe. Imagine this strange situation for a modern person. People lived here, built houses, planted gardens and farms, but at the same time, they obeyed orders from a man in faraway London. They considered themselves ordinary British people who simply lived across the ocean. It was in such a colonial world that little curious George grew up. His family was quite rich and respected in society. They owned huge pieces of land that were called plantations. But behind all this outward beauty, there was a very dark side. The Washington family, like many other rich people, owned hundreds of slaves. These were people brought from Africa against their own will. Little George grew up constantly seeing people without freedom around him. This is the biggest and very sad paradox in his biography. Later, when he became an adult, he would write important words about equality, but at the same time he himself remained a slave owner until the end of his life. He suffered from this contradiction, but he never found a way out. In childhood, George did not go to a regular school with desks. He had no professional teachers, no grades, and no noisy classmates. The boy studied at home. He read old books of his father and older brother. More than anything in the world, George loved mathematics and neat drawings. He had very beautiful handwriting and a very clear mind. When he turned only 11 years old, his father suddenly died. This became a huge blow for the whole family and for George himself. He had to grow up very quickly and start helping his mother. At the age of 16, he made a very brave decision. George left his comfortable home and went into the deep wild forests. He began to work as a surveyor. A surveyor is a person who measures the boundaries of land. Imagine a young guy with heavy tools on his shoulders. For many months he slept under the open sky, right on the ground. He cooked simple food for himself over a night fire. This was extremely dangerous work on the very edge of wild nature. There he often met Indians and learned their ancient tricks. George, learned to survive in the harshest and coldest conditions. These difficult years in the forests hardened his steel character. In the forest, you could not make mistakes, or you could die. When George turned 20, his military career began. But he did not plan to fight against the British king at all. On the contrary, at first he was a loyal officer in the British colonial army. A serious dispute started between Britain and France for American lands. Young and tall, Washington was sent on a dangerous scouting mission to the French. He had to travel hundreds of miles through snow and swamps. It was there, in the thick forests, that George heard the whistle of the first bullets. He wrote to his brother that this sound seemed charming to him, but the war quickly showed him its true and terrible face. One day his detachment fell into a very cruel and bloody ambush. Almost all his comrades were killed or badly wounded. 2 horses were killed under George, and his clothes were pierced by bullets. But he himself miraculously remained alive and did not even get a scratch. There, in the forests, he understood one very important thing. War is not beautiful parades, bright uniforms, and loud music. War is always dirt, cold, hunger, diseases, and death. Several years passed, and life in the colonies changed greatly. Relations between the Americans and the king in London became very bad. The British Empire had spent too much money on previous wars. To get the money back, the king introduced new huge taxes. Americans had to pay for everything, for sugar, newspapers, and tea. But at the same time, the people in America had no representatives in the British Parliament. They shouted, "No taxes without our participation in the laws." Massive protests began. Sometimes these protests turned into real fights. People went out into the streets and demanded justice and freedom of choice. At that time, George Washington lived quietly on his farm. He grew tobacco and wheat and did not want a big war, but he saw how unfairly they treated his native land. He understood that it was already impossible to agree peacefully with the king. George decided that it was time to put on his old military uniform again. In 1775, representatives from all 13 British colonies came to Philadelphia. More than 50 people gathered in the hall. These were the most respected people: lawyers, rich farmers, and merchants. George Washington was one of them. He was chosen as a delegate from his native colony of Virginia. He was not a random guest. He was an official participant in this important meeting. He did not make long, pompous, or very clever speeches. He just sat silently in the hall, but his appearance inspired trust. He was taller than everyone else, physically strong, and very calm. They chose him unanimously as the commander-in-chief of the new American army. But in reality, no real army existed yet. Washington faced a crowd of poor farmers, blacksmiths, and hunters. These people did not have the same uniforms, cannons, or gunpowder. Many soldiers did not even have shoes for winter. Washington began literally from zero to create discipline and military order. He spent his own personal money to buy food for the regiments. The soldiers saw that their general was suffering together with them. This is exactly how the legend of the great and wise father of the nation was born. Many people think that Washington easily and beautifully won all his battles. But the real historical truth looks much harsher and even scarier. In fact, George Washington lost many more battles than he won during the whole war. The professional British Army in those years was the most powerful force on the entire planet. The British had the best cannons, endless supplies of gunpowder, and perfect discipline. Washington was constantly forced to retreat and leave cities and important strategic positions. He was often criticized in Congress, and some officers even wanted to remove him from his post. But this tall and silent man had one unique talent. It was his incredible, almost superhuman endurance and iron persistence. He could keep the fighting spirit of his people even after the heaviest disasters. Once his army spent the winter in a place called Valley Forge. These were the most terrible months in the general's life. His soldiers were dying from cold, typhus, and ordinary hunger. They did not even have meat, and they ate flatbreads made of flour and water. Washington walked around the camp every day and encouraged the dying people. He did not hide in a warm house, but lived in a simple tent next to his soldiers. The most heroic and famous moment of that war was the crossing of the Delaware River. It happened on a very cold, icy, and completely dark Christmas night. His soldiers sailed in small boats among huge, sharp pieces of ice in complete silence. Many of them did not even have shoes, and they wrapped their feet in dirty rags. Bloody marks from their bare feet remained on the snow. It was a deadly risk, but Washington's plan worked perfectly. They attacked the enemy suddenly and won the first truly big victory. This battle returned people's faith that freedom was possible. After this victory, France entered the war. The French fleet helped to block the British from the sea, and this became the decisive factor. The War of Independence lasted a long and painful 8 years in total. In the end, despite all the hungry winters and losses, the Americans defeated the great empire. Washington instantly became the main national hero for the residents of all 13 states. People were so grateful to him that they sincerely wanted to make him king. They offered him absolute and eternal power over the new country and the title of monarch. For any other ambitious person, this would have been the most tempting moment in life. But Washington did something that surprised the whole world. He categorically refused the golden crown of a king. In 1783, he turned 51 years old. He felt very tired from the endless battles. George put down his weapons and officially handed power to Congress. He simply went home to his favorite farm. He wanted to do only agriculture and gardening. This act made him a legend all over the world. People saw a leader who had no thirst for power. However, the quiet life on the farm did not last long. The young country needed a wise and strong leader. In 1789, the very first elections were held in the USA. At that time, Washington was at his home. He did not travel around the cities and did not ask for votes. He did not run any election campaign. But all the leaders of the states understood. Only he could unite the nation. His name was included in the lists without his participation. George Washington won these elections with complete unanimity. The 57-year-old general was not at all happy about this news. He did not want to leave his comfortable home again. He did not want to take on huge responsibility, but he considered it his important duty to the country. He moved to New York, which was the capital at that time. There he began to create the first rules of the new country. He understood his action would become an important example. He refused pompous and expensive royal ceremonies. His wife Martha also did not like luxury at all. She missed her quiet farm very much. The life of such a great man very quickly became covered with beautiful and kind legends. The most famous of them is the myth about Little George and the blooming cherry tree. Probably every American schoolchild knows this instructive and sweet fairy tale. They say that Little George received a sharp and shiny axe as a gift from his father. He decided to test it immediately and accidentally cut down his father's favorite tree in the garden. When his father became very angry, the honest boy did not run away, hide, or make silly excuses. He looked his father straight in the eyes and said the famous phrase, "Father, I cannot tell a lie." This story for centuries teaches children to always tell the truth, no matter how bitter and dangerous it is. But I must disappoint you a little. This is a pure and very beautiful invention. This story never happened in the real childhood of George Washington. It was invented by the popular writer Mason Weems already after the death of the first president. The author simply wanted to make the image of the national hero ideal and almost holy for the young generation. People loved this legend so much that it became an eternal part of American national consciousness. There is another popular, but rather strange and even unpleasant myth. Many people still believe that Washington had wooden teeth. On all official portraits, he looks very serious and never smiles. George really had serious problems with his gums and teeth. By the time he became president, only one living tooth remained. This caused him constant physical pain, strong discomfort, and made it difficult to speak clearly in public. He was forced to wear special dentures, but they were never made of ordinary wood. His dentures were actually made of ivory and teeth of large animals. Unfortunately, sometimes real teeth of living people were used to create them. They were bought from poor people and slaves who urgently needed money. The dentures were held by tight and extremely uncomfortable metal springs. They constantly tried to jump out of the president's mouth during conversation. He had to clench his jaws tightly so that they would simply stay in place. It is because of this that on the $1 bill, he has such a strange and tense face. Look carefully at his hairstyle. We see lush white hair styled in neat and even curls. Most modern people are sure that George Washington always wore a wig. In the 18th century, expensive wigs were an obligatory fashion among all rich gentlemen and politicians. But here, too, we have another small but very interesting discovery. George Washington actually never wore wigs on his head. These were his own, absolutely real and rather thick hair. By nature, he was a reddish-haired man, but he strictly followed the secular fashion of his time. Every day he abundantly powdered his hair with special white powder. This was a long, inconvenient, and very dirty procedure for any person. The powder constantly fell on his shoulders and stained his expensive dark clothes. But the high status of the President of the USA obliged him to always look exactly like this. He wanted to seem to others a wise, solid, and very calm leader of the young nation. His appearance had to symbolize stability and order in the new state. George Washington honestly worked as president for 2 full terms. It was 8 years of very hard work, political intrigues, and constant disputes. People again and again asked him to stay for a 3rd term because they were afraid of changes. Many citizens sincerely believed that without his authority, the country would simply fall apart. But Washington again showed his unique political wisdom and foresight. He said that supreme power should not belong to one person for too long. With this, he established an unwritten rule for all future presidents of America. He finally retired and with relief returned to his estate, Mount Vernon. There he spent his last years enthusiastically doing agriculture, winemaking, and gardening. He loved to ride horseback across his fields and check the work on the farm. He died in December 1790 from a very strong cold and throat infection. In his last will, he made one very important and brave step. He officially ordered to free all his numerous slaves after the death of his wife. This was his final and honest answer to that old paradox of freedom. George Washington was definitely not a perfect person or a saint from books, but it was he who created the strong foundation on which all modern America stands. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. I hope that the story of George Washington was useful and interesting for you. Imagine you are standing high inside the head of a giant statue. You look out through 25 small windows. The wind is strong. The ocean is far below. You think, how did people build this huge lady? She is 46 meters tall without her base. With the base, she reaches 93 meters. Her skin is thin copper, yet she stands strong for more than 140 years. This is the Statue of Liberty. She is one of the most famous symbols in the world. Proud and kind at the same time. She seems to say, "This land can be your new home." She stands for the beautiful idea that every person deserves freedom. Every day the sun lights her crown. She watches busy ships come and go in the harbor. Some ships bring goods from far away. Other ships bring families who dream of a better life. She has seen happy times and difficult days. She has seen wars begin and peace return. Through all these years, she never moved from her place. At night, her torch shines with warm light. It helps sailors and travelers who feel lost at sea. Did you know? Lightning hits her up to 600 times every year. She is very strong and stays safe. This statue was a special gift from France to America, but it also carried a big promise. The promise is that freedom should belong to everyone in the world. Now, let us discover how this gift was created many years ago. The story starts in France in the year 1865. A group of friends sat together at dinner. They talked about liberty and about the United States. One man named Edouard de la Boulaye loved both countries deeply. He remembered how France helped America win independence long ago. He also wanted to celebrate the end of slavery in America. He asked a wonderful question. What if France gave America a giant monument? It would come from the hearts of French people to American people. Everyone at the table liked this idea very much. Among the guests was a talented sculptor. His name was Frederick Auguste Bartholdi. He felt very excited and inspired. He began to imagine a huge figure of a woman. She would represent liberty itself. She would look strong, yet gentle and kind. Not like a soldier, not like a king. Just a woman of freedom. Interesting fact, Bartholdi first wanted to build a giant statue in Egypt. He planned it as a lighthouse for the Suez Canal. But the idea changed and became Our Lady Liberty. Bartholdi decided to visit America. He sailed across the ocean and entered New York Harbor. He saw a small, quiet island. It was called Bedloe's Island then. Later, it got the name Liberty Island. He knew right away this was the perfect place for the statue. But making such a tall statue was very difficult. It needed a lot of money and many materials. Governments did not want to pay everything. Bartholdi had to ask ordinary people for help. He returned to France and made small models. He showed them to citizens and explained the idea. He even showed the finished head and the arm with the torch in Paris. Thousands of people came to see the giant pieces at the exhibition. Building the statue took many years of hard work. People had only simple tools and no big machines. They shaped every part with great care. In her right hand, she holds a torch high. This torch means light and hope. It shows the way to a better life. For 16 years, the torch even worked as a real lighthouse. In her left hand, she holds a tablet. The tablet shows the date July 4th, 1776. That was the day America became free. The tablet reminds us that freedom needs fair laws. On her head, she wears a crown with 7 points. These points are like sun rays. They represent 7 seas and 7 continents. This means liberty is for all people everywhere. At her feet, you can see broken chains. The broken chains show that people are no longer held back. At first, the chains were meant to celebrate freedom from slavery. She walks forward with courage. This teaches us that freedom is a long journey. We must keep moving toward it. Her face looks calm, serious, and strong. Many people say it was inspired by Bartholdi's own mother. The statue is 46 meters tall without the pedestal. With the base, she reaches 93 meters. Strong winds blow around her every day. Bartholdi asked a famous engineer for help. The engineer was Gustav Eiffel. He designed a strong iron skeleton inside. It works like bones that hold the body together. The outside is made of thin copper sheets. Each sheet is only about 4 millimeters thick. There are more than 300 copper pieces in total. Workers hammered the copper with loud noise and much effort. They built the statue piece by piece in Paris. The iron inside can move a little in strong wind. The statue can sway up to 8 centimeters. This keeps her safe from breaking. Money was often a big problem. French people gave coins when they could. In America, people needed to build a large stone base. Many Americans did not want to pay for a gift. The work almost stopped. Then a smart newspaper owner named Joseph Pulitzer helped. He wrote in his popular paper, The World. He asked every person to give a little money. It did not matter if you were rich or poor. He promised to print every name in the newspaper. Children sent their saved pennies. Workers sent small coins after hard days. Soon enough, money was collected. This showed the statue truly belonged to all ordinary people. In France, they also held fun events and concerts to raise more funds. Everyone felt excited about the future monument. When the statue was finally ready in France, she was too big for one ship. Workers took her apart carefully. They packed everything into 214 large wooden crates. A ship called Isir carried the heavy load across the Atlantic. The ship carried more than 200 tons of metal. The ocean was sometimes rough and dangerous, but the ship arrived safely in New York in June 1885. The stone pedestal was not finished yet. The crates waited on the island for almost a year. When the base was ready, workers started the hard job of rebuilding. They climbed high every day and used heavy tools. It was like solving a giant puzzle in the sky. Slowly the statue rose again. First the feet, then the robes, then the body, and finally the head with the torch. At first the copper was shiny reddish-brown, like a new penny. Rain, wind, salt air, and time slowly changed the color. It first turned dark brown. Then over about 20 years it became the beautiful green we see today. This green layer is called patina. It actually protects the copper and helps the statue last longer. The big celebration day was October 28th, 1886. It was rainy and foggy, but thousands of people came anyway. A large parade moved through the streets with music and cheers. The President of the United States, Grover Cleveland, gave a speech. Guests from France were there too. Bartholdi climbed up to the torch. He pulled a rope. A French flag covering the face fell down. Everyone saw her face for the first time. Ships blew loud whistles. The crowd cheered with great joy. That day, the friendship between the two countries became even stronger. Soon after, Ellis Island opened near the statue. Millions of immigrants arrived from Europe. More than 12 million people passed through in total. They left difficult lives behind. They hoped for safety and a new beginning. The very first person processed there was a young girl named Annie Moore from Ireland. She came with her two brothers in 1892. When tired families saw the Statue of Liberty from the ship, many cried happy tears. Some felt fear, but most felt big hope. She looked like a kind mother welcoming her children home. She gave them courage for their new life. A poet named Emma Lazarus wrote a famous poem. She called the statue the Mother of Exiles. The words say, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." These lines are now inside the pedestal. They made the statue a symbol of welcome and new life for everyone. Today, the Statue of Liberty is more than 140 years old. Millions of visitors come every year. They climb the stairs to her crown. There are 25 windows in the crown. They look out at the wide ocean. They learn her full story and take photos. She is not only a popular tourist place, she is a living reminder for all of us. We must protect freedom because it is never given forever. In our world, many people still search for liberty. Many still need a safe place to live. Her torch continues to shine brightly. Her message stays the same. Welcome to all. What does freedom mean to you? It can mean the right to speak openly. It can mean the chance to learn and grow. It can mean the feeling of safety at home. The Statue of Liberty believes these things are important for every human. She does not ask where you were born. She does not ask what language you speak. She opens her arms wide to everyone. Think about all the hard work behind her. The thin copper, the strong iron, the small coins from children, and the big dream of one sculptor. Most of all, remember her shining torch. Even when times feel dark, her light tells us that hope is always possible. Together, people can create something truly beautiful. Thank you for listening to the story of the Statue of Liberty. Thank you, dear friends, for watching until the end. Many people say this: the dollar is just green paper. But this idea is not true. The dollar was not always paper, it was not always green, and at the beginning it was not even American. So where did it come from? And how did it become so powerful? Let us go back in time. A long time ago, money looked very different. People did not use paper money. They used metal coins, and silver and gold were very important. At that time, there was no United States. The country did not exist yet. One strong country at that time was Spain. Spain controlled large lands in America, long before the modern USA. In these lands, Spain found a lot of silver. This was very important because silver was the main metal for money. Spain made coins from this silver. These coins were simple, strong, and easy to use. People trusted them. Traders used them in many places. They used them in Europe, and they also used them in Asia. These coins traveled across oceans and moved between continents. This was early global trade. This coin became very popular. It was called the Spanish dollar. It was one of the first global currencies. For many people, it was normal to use this coin in everyday trade. At first, everything looked good for Spain. It had silver, it had money, and it had power. But there was a problem. Spain had a lot of silver, but it did not produce enough goods. There was too much money and not enough things to buy. Because of this, prices started to rise, money became weaker, and Spain slowly lost its power. Other countries became stronger. England was one of them. Now the situation changed again. Great Britain built a large empire and controlled important trade routes. Its ships moved goods around the world. Britain used a different system. It used gold instead of silver. Gold was more rare and more stable, so people trusted it more. The British currency was the pound sterling. It became very important in global trade. Many countries used it, and for a long time Britain was the global leader. Its money was strong and trusted. But this did not last forever. A big change came with World War I. The war was very expensive. Countries spent a lot of money. They bought weapons, food, and supplies. They used their gold. Britain lost a large part of its gold, and its system became weaker. Many other countries had the same problem, but one country was in a different position. The United States was far from the war. Its cities were safe, and its factories continued to work. While other countries were losing resources, the United States was producing goods. It sold food, weapons, and equipment. Other countries needed these goods, so they paid the United States. Very often, they paid in gold. So gold moved to the United States. This was a turning point. The United States became richer, and its economy grew quickly. Factories produced more goods, new industries appeared, and companies grew. Production increased in many areas. At the same time, people moved to the United States from Europe. Many scientists and engineers left Europe because of the war. They brought knowledge and new ideas. This helped the United States grow even faster. Now the situation was very different. Before the war, Europe was strong. After the war, Europe was weak. Before the war, Britain was the leader. After the war, it had serious problems, and the United States moved forward. There was another important change. The United States sold goods for dollars. Other countries needed dollars to buy these goods, so they started to use dollars in trade. At first, this happened mainly in Latin America. The United States had strong influence in this region. It built businesses, supported trade, and invested money. One important project was the Panama Canal. After its construction, Panama started to use the US dollar. Other countries in the region followed a similar path. Countries in this region traded with the United States and depended on its market. Because of this, they used dollars more and more. Step by step, the dollar spread across the region. It became the main currency in the Western Hemisphere. This was a big step for the dollar, but it was still not the main currency in the world. The dollar was growing, but something even bigger was coming. A new global system was about to appear, and it would change everything. After World War II, the world was very different. Many countries in Europe were destroyed. Cities were in ruins, and factories did not work. Economies were weak, and people needed help. But the United States was strong. Its cities were safe, and its factories worked. It also had a very large amount of gold. At that time, the United States held most of the world's gold. This gave it a special position. The world needed a new system. Countries needed stability. They needed clear rules for money and trade. In 1944, many countries met to build this system. They met in a place called Bretton Woods. Leaders from different countries came together and made an important decision. They chose the US dollar as the center of the system. Other currencies were linked to the dollar, and the dollar was linked to gold. The United States promised a simple rule. You could exchange dollars for gold. This created trust. It also made trade easier. After the war, Europe needed money. The United States gave support. This was called the Marshall Plan. The money came in dollars. Dollars spread across Europe. Countries used them to rebuild factories, roads, and cities. Trade started again. Economies began to grow. Step by step, the dollar became stronger. There was another important change. Oil became very important for the world. Countries needed oil for cars, planes, and industry. Oil was sold in dollars. This created a simple rule for the world. If you need oil, you need dollars. Every country needed oil, so every country needed dollars. The system looked strong. Everything seemed stable, but there was a problem. In the 1960s, the United States spent a lot of money. It spent money inside the country, and it spent money on war. More and more dollars appeared in the world, but gold did not grow at the same speed. Now the balance was broken. There were too many dollars and not enough gold. Some countries began to worry. They started to ask questions. Can the United States really give gold for all these dollars? Trust started to fall. One country decided to act. It was France. Its leader was Charles de Gaulle. He did not trust the system. He wanted real value. He wanted gold. France made a clear move. It sent dollars to the United States and asked for gold in return. We can imagine this moment. Take your dollars, he said. Give us gold. Ships carried dollars across the ocean. Later, ships returned with gold. This did not happen only once. It happened again and again. Other countries were watching. They saw what France was doing. They started to think the same way. If France can do this, we can do it too. This was dangerous. If many countries asked for gold, the system would break. The United States understood the risk. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a decision. He stopped the exchange of dollars for gold. This moment changed everything. The link between the dollar and gold was broken. Now the dollar was different. It was no longer backed by gold. It was based on trust. Many people thought this was the end, but it was not. The dollar stayed strong. Why? Because the system was already built around it. Countries used dollars in trade. Banks used dollars. Markets used dollars. It was very hard to change everything. There was also oil. Oil was still sold in dollars. This kept demand high. Countries still needed dollars every day. The United States also had power. Its economy was large. Its influence was strong. So the system continued. Over time, it became even stronger. The dollar stayed at the center of global trade and finance. Today, the dollar is still the main global currency. It is used in trade, in banks, and in markets. Many countries keep reserves in dollars. This story shows something important. Money is not only metal or paper, it is trust. The dollar became global step by step. Wars changed the system. Trade changed the system. Decisions changed the system. And even today, the story is not finished. The world is changing again. But for now, the US dollar remains at the center of the global system.
Hi, friends. Today we will talk about one very interesting place. About Hollywood. You have probably heard this word many times. Hollywood is a symbol of dreams, success, and great glamour. It gives us movies that we love so much. But how did it all start? Let us find out together. Ready? Then let's go. Many, many years ago, more than 130 years ago, there was no cinema here. None at all. Imagine this. Instead of studios and red carpets, there was a quiet green valley. People called it Cahuenga Valley. It is not far from the city of Los Angeles. Beautiful fruit trees grew here. Oranges, lemons, figs, and even grapes. People grew vegetables, tomatoes, potatoes, and carrots. You may ask, how is that? Is California not a desert? No, friends, this is not a desert. There was a lot of sun here, warm climate, and water that flowed from the mountains. So the land was very fertile. Farmers lived well. They sold fruits and vegetables to nearby cities. Life was simple, calm, and peaceful. Nobody even thought that a world movie industry would appear here one day. In 1886, one family came here. Their last name was Wilcox. They came from the state of Kansas. The husband's name was Harvey. The wife's name was Daida. They bought a big piece of land. They wanted to create a quiet and beautiful place for life here. In 1887, they gave a name to their land. They called it Hollywood. The word Hollywood means holly forest. Why? Because beautiful bushes with sharp leaves grew around. At first, there were only farms and small wooden houses here. People worked on the land, grew crops, and enjoyed life. Everything was very simple. Now let us move a little forward. Cinema had just appeared in the world. This was at the very end of the 19th century. At first, movies were made in a completely different place, on the east coast of America, especially in New York and in New Jersey. You may ask, why exactly in New York? Good question. At that time, New York was the biggest and richest city in America. Millions of people lived there. There was money, theaters, actors, and inventors. One of the most famous inventors was Thomas Edison. He created the first cameras for moving pictures. His studios made short films. People came and watched them with great interest. Cinema became popular very fast. Everyone wanted to see new stories on the screen. And here the most interesting part of the story begins. Imagine this situation. Edison wanted to control all cinema. In 1908, he and his friends created a special company. It was called the Motion Picture Patents Company. People often called it simply Edison Trust. This company collected all the important patents for cameras and projectors. You may ask, what are these patents and why do we need them? A patent is an official right to an invention. Edison and his partners said, only we have the right to use these cameras legally. All other directors who wanted to make films by themselves had to pay them a lot of money. They had to pay every time. For using the camera, for making the film, and even for showing the film in a cinema. If a director did not pay, they took him to court. The Edison Trust sent special people like detectives. They looked for illegal cameras, took them away, and closed cinemas that showed films without permission. Independent directors had a very hard time. They lost money, time, and nerves. Many of them thought, this is not right. We want to make films freely. So these brave directors decided to leave. They were looking for a place where Edison and his company could not reach them. They went very far to the west of America, to California. Why did California help them? First, it was very far from New York. Second, local judges did not really want to help Edison. If a court case started, a director could quickly go to Mexico, and Edison's patents did not work there. And third, and this is very important, in California the sun shines almost always. There are 300 sunny days a year. This is perfect weather for shooting outside. Here there is the ocean, mountains, desert, and forests. You can shoot many different stories. Land was very cheap. Workers were cheap too. It was an ideal place. In 1911, the first small studio opened in Hollywood. It was called Nestor Studio. Soon other independent directors came here too. Hollywood began to grow fast and strongly. And in 1923, a big white sign appeared on the hill. At first it said, Hollywoodland. It was just an advertisement for new houses for rich people. Later they removed the word land. Only the beautiful word Hollywood remained. Since then, this sign has become a real symbol of dreams. Now you understand why cinema moved from New York to California. Hollywood started very simply with fruit gardens and quiet farms. But brave people came here. They did not want to pay Edison and wanted to make films freely. They found the perfect place here. This is exactly how the history of Hollywood began. In 1927, an important event happened. The first big sound film came out. It was called The Jazz Singer. Before that, actors only acted without words. They showed emotions with their face and hands. Now they could speak. It was very surprising for the viewers. People heard the voices of actors for the first time. Sound completely changed cinema. Movies became much more interesting. Movies became more alive and closer to real life. At this time, big studios became very strong. There were 5 big companies. They were MGM, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Fox, and RKO. People called them the Big Five. They controlled almost everything in cinema. They wrote scripts for movies themselves. They made these movies themselves. They showed movies in their own cinemas. Actors worked under long contracts. The studio decided which roles they would play. The studio created their beautiful images. This was the real studio system. You may ask how this looked in real life. Studios worked like big factories. Every year they made many movies. They hired scriptwriters and directors. They hired cameramen and actors. They had big costume rooms. Thousands of dresses and suits hung there. They had workshops for decorations. They built whole streets and houses. Everything was under strict studio control. This was a wonderful time of shine and glamour. Stars shone very brightly on the screen. Marilyn Monroe smiled at all viewers. Her smile was very famous. Clark Gable was strong and manly. Audrey Hepburn was elegant and sweet. Humphrey Bogart played tough men. There were other famous stars too. For example, Cary Grant and Bette Davis. Grace Kelly was popular too. Viewers loved these actors very much. They went to cinemas with great joy. People watched movies with great pleasure. In 1939, 2 great movies came out. One movie was called Gone with the Wind. It was a long story of love and war. The other movie was The Wizard of Oz. It was a bright and beautiful fairy tale. It had many colors and songs. Romantic comedies were light and funny. They made people laugh from the heart. They made people dream about love. Noir films were dark and mysterious. Musical films lifted the mood of all viewers. Hollywood sold the American dream to the whole world. It showed luxury and beautiful life. It showed success and great happiness. Red carpets shone brightly. Movie premieres were very beautiful. Loud music played at the premieres. Searchlights lit up the night sky. Stars wore expensive, beautiful dresses. They arrived in big, expensive cars. All this looked like a magic fairy tale. Even in the hard years of the Great Depression, people went to the cinema. Many lost their jobs and money at that time. They wanted to forget about their problems. On the screen, everything was bright and beautiful. On the screen, everything ended well. Hollywood gave people hope and strength. It taught a simple and important thing. If you try hard, dreams can come true. You only need to believe and work hard. Studios worked very smartly and professionally. They hired good stylists and photographers. They wrote interesting articles about stars. These articles were printed in magazines and newspapers. Stars became real idols for people. Children wanted to be like them. Adults also dreamed about such life. They dreamed about fame and wealth. They dreamed about beautiful houses and cars. At this time, Hollywood became an important symbol, a symbol of luxury and great success, a symbol of respectability and bright glamour. When people heard the word Hollywood, they smiled. They imagined shine and beauty. They imagined fame and a happy ending. A big white sign stood on the hill. It shone for the whole world. It attracted new dreamers to itself. But nothing stays the same forever. In the 60s, many things changed. The golden age was gradually ending. Studios lost part of their great power. Popular television appeared in homes. People watched movies and shows at home more often. Young directors wanted to make films in a new way. They showed more honest life. They showed real problems of ordinary people. Later this time was called New Hollywood. The Golden Age was a truly magical period. It created many wonderful beloved movies. We still love to watch them. It made Hollywood famous all over the world. Hollywood showed everyone two important things. Cinema is a great art. Cinema is also a successful business. In the 70s and 80s, cinema became even bigger. Big blockbusters appeared. Movies were very large-scale and expensive. Jaws by Steven Spielberg scared people. People were afraid to go into the water after the movie. Star Wars by George Lucas opened space. There were spaceships and lasers there. Indiana Jones showed adventures and humor. Harrison Ford played the main hero. People watched these movies with great delight. Cinema turned into a huge successful business. In the 90s and 2000s, everything changed again. Movies about superheroes appeared. Marvel created Iron Man with Robert Downey. Marvel created The Avengers with many heroes. DC released Batman and Superman. People loved to watch teams of strong heroes. They fought evil together. Movie budgets became very big. They collected billions of dollars all over the world. Movies came out one after another. Viewers waited for new parts with impatience. And then a completely new time came. Streaming services appeared. These were Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon, and others. Now people watch movies at home. They watch on the sofa. They watch on the big television. There is no need to go to the cinema every time. This is very convenient for all viewers. This greatly changed the whole movie industry. Studios began to make more series. Game of Thrones became a big hit. Stranger Things also pleased viewers. Series sometimes turn out more interesting than movies. People watch them for whole seasons. They watch episode after episode. This is pleasant and easy to do at home. Today, Hollywood is a big complex system. There are expensive blockbusters for cinemas. There is small independent cinema. There are series and short videos. Stars act everywhere. They also show their life on social networks. They share photos and videos with fans. Fans follow them every day. The glamour has not disappeared from Hollywood. Stars live in beautiful big mansions. They come to awards in luxurious clothes. The red carpet still shines brightly. Searchlights light up the night sky. Stars smile and wave their hands. This looks very beautiful and festive. But behind this shine there are also difficulties. Many actors look for good roles for a long time. Competition remains very strong. Sometimes filming moves to other states. Sometimes filming moves to other countries. This happens because of tax benefits. Work in Hollywood can be hard and nervous. Despite all the changes, Hollywood continues to live. it still remains a symbol of a big dream. When a person from any country says, "I want to go to Hollywood," he dreams of fame and success. He dreams of recognition all over the world. He wants to tell his story to people. Hollywood teaches us many important things. It shows beauty and different emotions. It shows different fates of people. It connects people from different countries. Movies are translated into many languages. Everyone watches and understands the feelings of the heroes. Cinema helps to understand each other better. Of course, not everything is always perfect in Hollywood. Behind the bright shine, sometimes problems are hidden. Many dreams break against harsh reality. But the real magic of cinema remains with us. The big white Hollywood sign stands on the hill. It has stood there for many years. It reminds everyone of one simple thing: dream boldly and work hard. Your story can also become a movie. This is the full story of Hollywood we got. It started with quiet farms and fruit gardens. Then brave directors came here. They wanted to make movies freely. Hollywood became a dream factory. It became a symbol of luxury and success. Today it changes together with the world, but it always gives joy and inspiration. It always gives hope to millions of people. Friends, thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching the video until the end.
Today we talk about Apple and Steve Jobs. You probably know this story already. This video is for your English listening practice. Listen to the sentences and simple words. Now let's begin the story. Apple started very small. Two young men had a simple idea. They wanted to build a computer. A computer for normal people in 1976 in California. It began. Steve Jobs was 21 years old. He was a dreamer and a leader. He loved simple and clean design. His friend was Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was a brilliant engineer. He was quiet and very smart. They were very different people, but they worked well together. They had no office and no money. They only had a small garage. It was behind Jobs' parents' house. They also had a strong idea. They wanted simple technology for everyone, a computer that anyone could use, even without technical knowledge. Wozniak built the first computer. It was called Apple I. It had no screen and no keyboard. It was only a simple board. But the computer worked well. Jobs wanted to sell this product. He went to a small computer store. The store was called Byte Shop. Jobs made a bold promise there. He offered to build 50 computers. Each one cost $500. They had only 30 days, but they had serious problems. They had no parts and no money. They had no factory at all. Still, Jobs believed in the idea. He sold his van for money. He borrowed money from friends. He asked suppliers for help. They gave parts on credit. Jobs and Wozniak worked every day. They built computers by hand. They worked inside the small garage. They did everything themselves. In the end, they sold over 200 units. It was a strong result for beginners. Two young men built a real business. The company started to grow. Why did they choose the name Apple? Jobs liked simple and friendly names. Apple sounded easy and warm. It was also easy to remember. It came before Atari in the phone book. Jobs once worked at Atari. He also followed a fruit diet then. so the name felt right to him. On April 1st, 1976, Apple was born. Yes, it was April Fool's Day, but the company was very serious. This was only the beginning. The company wanted to grow fast. They needed a better computer, something more complete and modern. Wozniak started a new project. It was called Apple II. This computer had a screen and keyboard. It also had a plastic case. It was easy to use. People liked it very much. Apple showed it at a tech event. Investors became very interested. In 1977, Apple II was launched. Sales grew very quickly. The company made good money. Apple became very successful. By 1980, Apple was very strong. It earned over $100 million yearly. The company was growing very fast. It was no longer a small startup. In December 1980, Apple went public. People could buy company shares. Many employees became very rich. Steve Jobs became a millionaire. But Jobs wanted something bigger. He wanted a new kind of computer, more powerful and more beautiful. Something that would change everything. At that time, IBM was very strong. It controlled the computer market. Apple wanted to compete with IBM. Jobs was ready for this fight. Apple started new projects inside. Teams worked on different ideas. Some wanted safe improvements. Jobs wanted bold new products. Jobs pushed his team very hard. He demanded speed and perfection. Some people liked his style. Others found it very difficult. Then Apple started a key project. It was called the Macintosh. A small team worked on it. They worked day and night. The Macintosh was very different. It used a mouse and simple interface. People could click on icons. No need for complex commands. In 1984, Apple launched Macintosh. The presentation was very famous. People were excited and impressed. The product looked like the future. At first, sales were strong. Many people wanted the new computer. But problems appeared very soon. The system was slow and limited. It had little memory. It had no hard drive. It was expensive for customers. Businesses did not like it. At the same time, competition grew. IBM stayed very strong in the market. Microsoft started developing Windows. New rivals appeared quickly. Inside Apple, tension increased. Jobs worked with CEO John Sculley. At first, they agreed on strategy. Later, they began to disagree. Jobs wanted big risks and control. Sculley wanted stable business decisions. Their conflict became very serious. The company faced internal problems. In 1985, the board made a decision. They removed Jobs from his role. Soon after, he left Apple. He was only 30 years old. This was a very hard moment. Jobs felt disappointed and sad. But the story did not end here. After Jobs left, Apple kept making computers, but the company lost its clear direction. Products became expensive and confusing. Customers slowly stopped choosing Apple. From 1986 to 1996, mistakes continued. Apple released too many different models. Each model had its own system and design. There was no simple product line. Competitors became stronger every year. Microsoft, IBM, Dell, and HP grew fast. Their computers were cheaper and more practical. Apple started losing market share. By 1996, the situation was very serious. Apple lost about $1 billion each year. Its stock fell below $7. The company had little cash left. Some people said Apple was finished. Magazines wrote that the company was dead. The brand looked weak and outdated. Apple needed help very quickly. Now we return to Steve Jobs. After leaving Apple, he started a new company. The company was called Next. He founded it in 1985. Next built powerful computers for business. The machines looked beautiful and modern, but they were very expensive to buy. Each one cost around $6,500. Sales were not strong for Next, but the software was excellent. The system was stable and easy to use. It was ahead of its time. During this time, Jobs made another move. He bought a small company called Pixar. He paid about $5 million. Later, Pixar became very successful. Now back to Apple in 1996. Apple needed a new operating system. Its old system was slow and outdated. The company looked for help outside. Apple decided to buy NXT. The deal cost about $429 million. With this deal, Jobs returned to Apple. He came back after 12 years away. When Jobs returned, he was not happy. He saw too many weak products. He asked simple but hard questions. Why do we make so many computers? At that time, Apple had many models. Each model had a different name. People could not understand the lineup. Even employees were confused. Jobs made a simple plan. He drew a grid with 4 products: consumer and professional, desktop and laptop. That was the new structure. He cut many product lines quickly. He removed weak and unnecessary models. He focused the company on quality. Less products, but better results. This decision changed Apple's future. The company became more focused. Teams worked with a clear direction. Design and simplicity became central again. Jobs wanted a new kind of computer, not just useful, but also emotional. He wanted people to love the product, not only use it. He worked with designer Jony Ive. Ive was quiet and very talented. Together, they created a new computer. It was called the iMac. The iMac looked very different. It had a bright blue color. The case was transparent and rounded. It looked friendly and modern. It was also easy to use. Everything was in one device. There was no floppy drive anymore. Many people were surprised by that. The iMac launched in August 1998. It sold very well from the start. In 5 months, 800,000 units sold. Revenue passed $1 billion. People returned to Apple again. Customers trusted the brand once more. The company was no longer dying. It was growing again. Jobs continued to simplify everything. He removed weak teams and products. He focused on design and user experience. He wanted everything clean and simple. Even packaging became minimal and white. The Apple logo also changed style. It became simple and modern. The brand looked more serious. Apple became an emotional brand again. It was not just about technology. It was about feeling and identity. People connected with the company. In 1997, Apple had large debt. But soon, the situation improved. By 1990, Apple was profitable again. The recovery was fast. The stock grew from $7 to $99. Market value increased strongly. New products also gained attention. People started believing in Apple again. Jobs said something important then. We do not just sell computers, we build tools for the human mind. Tools that can change the world. One surprising move happened in 1997. Apple made a deal with Microsoft. Many people were shocked and confused. The two companies were old rivals. Microsoft invested $150 million. Apple agreed to support Microsoft Office. This deal helped Apple survive. It gave the company more time. Jobs explained the decision clearly. Apple does not need Microsoft to lose. Apple only needs to improve itself. This was a strategic move. By the year 2000, Apple was stable. The company had strong products again. The system was modern and reliable. Customers were returning. But Jobs was not satisfied. He wanted something much bigger. He did not want only computers. He wanted a lifestyle company. He cared about design and music. He cared about simple experiences. He believed technology should feel natural. And then a new idea appeared. At that time, music was complicated. CDs were large and not convenient. MP3 players were hard to use. People were frustrated with music. Jobs saw a clear opportunity. He wanted a simple music device. It had to be elegant and easy. It had to feel like magic. Apple started a secret project. A small team worked on it. They focused on design and simplicity. Every detail was carefully planned. In October 2001, Apple launched the iPod. It was small and very simple. It could hold 1,000 songs. It fit easily in your pocket. Jobs presented it on stage. He used one simple sentence: 1,000 songs in your pocket. People immediately understood the idea. The iPod became very popular. It was more than a device. It was a new experience. People felt connected to it. Apple also changed its marketing style. Ads were simple and artistic. They showed people dancing with iPods. No words, only emotion and music. At first, sales were not very high. The iPod worked only with Mac computers. Most users had Windows systems. This limited early growth. In 2003, Apple made a key decision. They released iTunes for Windows. Now everyone could use the iPod. Sales grew very quickly. Numbers increased every year. 2001 started with the first iPod. 2005 reached over 22 million units. Growth was very strong. Revenue also increased fast, from $5.4 billion to $19 billion. Profit grew from $65 million to $2 billion. Apple became a global company again. In 2001, Apple opened retail stores. The first store was in Virginia. Many people doubted this idea. They thought it would fail. But Jobs had a clear vision. Stores had to be clean and simple. Employees had to be friendly and helpful. The focus was experience, not pressure. The stores became very successful. More stores opened every year. By 2006, Apple had over 170 stores. People visited them like special places. At the same time, Apple improved computers. They released Mac OS X. They launched new Mac products. Design and performance improved. Apple was changing fast again. It was not only a computer company, it became a leader in music and design. The brand became strong and modern. Jobs once said something important. People with passion can change the world. And Apple was just getting started. By 2005, Apple was growing fast. The company was strong again. But Steve Jobs was not satisfied. He saw problems in another market. Mobile phones were everywhere then, but they were hard to use. Small screens and many buttons, slow internet, and poor design. Even the best phones felt outdated. Nokia, Motorola, and BlackBerry led, but their devices were complex. Jobs believed Apple could do better. At first, Apple tried a partnership. They worked with Motorola on a phone. The phone was called ROCOR. It supported iTunes Music, but the result was very bad. The phone was slow and limited. It could store only 100 songs. The experience was not smooth. Jobs was very disappointed. He said this was the wrong approach. Then he made a bold decision. Apple would build its own phone. He created a secret team. Only selected people could join. They worked in a hidden building. It was called the Purple Dome. The project was very difficult. The team worked day and night. No weekends and high pressure. The goal was almost impossible. They wanted one simple device, a phone, music player, and internet tool. No keyboard, only a touchscreen. Everything inside one small device. After years of work, it was ready. The world still knew nothing. Then came a big moment. January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs stood on stage. He wore his black turtleneck. He spoke to the audience slowly. He built the moment carefully. He said Apple would launch 3 products: a music player with touch, a new mobile phone, an internet communication device. Then he paused and smiled. He repeated the same 3 ideas. The audience started to understand. These were not 3 products. They were one single device. Apple called it the iPhone. The audience reacted loudly. People were shocked and excited. The first iPhone was very advanced. It had a large touch screen, no keyboard and no extra buttons, only one home button. It had real internet browsing. It had maps and visual voicemail. It also worked as an iPod. Everything was in one device. The design was clean and simple. It felt new and futuristic. No other phone looked like this. It changed user expectations. The iPhone launched in June 2007. Price was $499 or $599. It worked only with AT&T. Sales started very fast. People waited outside stores for days. There were long lines everywhere. Media covered the launch heavily. The demand was very high. In the first weekend, 270,000 units sold. By the end of the year, 1.39 million. Apple's value crossed $100 billion. The company reached a new level. But Jobs wanted more than a phone. He wanted a full ecosystem, a system of apps and services. Something bigger than hardware. In 2008, Apple launched the App Store. Developers could create applications. Users could download them easily. Everything worked in one place. This changed the industry completely. The iPhone became more powerful. It could do many different tasks. Each app added new value. The App Store grew very fast. Hundreds of apps became thousands. Downloads reached billions quickly. Apple earned strong revenue. Apple released new iPhones every year. Each version improved the last one. Better speed and better cameras. New features and better design. The iPhone 3G added GPS. The 3GS became faster and smoother. The iPhone 4 had a new display. It also introduced FaceTime. Later came the iPhone 4S. It introduced Siri Voice Assistant. Each model sold millions of units. Demand kept growing every year. By 2010, iPhone sales were very high. Over 40 million units per year. Revenue passed $25 billion. The iPhone led Apple's business. Apple was no longer just computers. It became a consumer electronics leader. The company influenced daily life. People used Apple products everywhere. From 2006 to 2010, growth was huge. Revenue rose from 19 to 65 billion. Profit grew from 2 to 14 billion. Stock price passed $300. Market value reached over 300 billion. Apple became one of the top companies. The iPhone drove most of the growth. It was the main product. But behind this success was a problem. Steve Jobs was sick again. He had cancer since 2003. He had surgery before. The illness never fully disappeared. In 2008, he looked very thin. In 2009, he took a medical leave. Rumors started to spread. Each time he appeared, people worried. Apple's stock reacted to his health. But Jobs continued to work. He refused to stop. He still had one more idea. He saw a new type of device, between a phone and a laptop. Something simple and powerful. Many people did not believe him. They said tablets already failed before. They thought it was not useful. But Jobs saw a different future. Apple started another secret project. The team focused on every detail: weight, battery, and screen quality. Also, the feeling of touch. In January 2010, Jobs returned on stage. He looked thin and weak, but his energy was still strong. He introduced a new product. It was called the iPad. A simple and powerful tablet. It could read, watch, and work, all with your fingers. At first, people laughed at it. They said it was a big phone. They did not see the value. But users quickly changed their minds. The iPad was fast and easy. It felt natural to use. People enjoyed the experience. Sales grew very quickly. In 80 days, 3 million units sold. By the end of 2010, 15 million. Revenue passed $9 billion. The product was very successful. The iPad proved Apple's strength. The company was leading innovation. It was not following others. It created new categories. Even during illness, Jobs worked closely. He reviewed design and products. He cared about every detail. Nothing was too small. He believed in simplicity and focus. He often said no to many ideas. Only the best ideas survived. This became Apple's culture. By 2011, Apple was very strong. iPhone sales passed 70 million yearly. iPad sales passed 30 million yearly. Revenue reached over 100 billion. Profit was about $25 billion. Stock price reached around $390. Market value passed 350 billion. Apple became number one briefly. But Jobs was getting weaker. He lost weight and energy. He moved more slowly. His voice became quieter. In January 2011, he took leave again. This time he did not fully return. He made one last public appearance. It was the iPad 2 launch. Inside Apple, people understood the situation. Jobs was preparing for the end. He spent time with family. He reflected on his life. On August 24, 2011, he wrote a letter. He resigned as CEO of Apple. He said he could not continue. It was a very hard moment. Tim Cook became the new CEO. Jobs became chairman of the board. But everyone knew the truth. This was a goodbye. On October 5, 2011, Apple announced news Steve Jobs had passed away. He was 56 years old. The world reacted strongly. People brought flowers to Apple stores. Messages appeared all over the internet. Leaders and rivals shared respect. His impact was clear. Steve Jobs left more than a company. He left a clear vision, a culture of simplicity and quality, a belief in bold ideas. He once said something powerful. We are here to change the universe. Otherwise, why are we here? And he proved it. After Steve Jobs, a new leader stepped forward. His name was Tim Cook. He was calm and very disciplined. He was very different from Jobs. Jobs was emotional and creative. Cook was quiet and very strategic. Many people felt unsure at first. They asked many difficult questions. Would Apple still take risks? Would the company still innovate? Would the brand lose its spirit? These fears were very real. But Cook had a strong foundation. Jobs had prepared the company well. There was a clear product plan. There was a strong team inside Apple. Jobs gave Cook simple advice. Do not try to copy me. Be yourself and lead correctly. Protect what makes Apple special. Cook followed this advice closely. He continued Apple's main strategy. He focused on quality and design. He kept the company stable and strong. After 2011, Apple launched new products. Some were already in development. The iPhone 4S was released first. Then came new iPads and updates. The iPhone 5 brought a larger screen. iOS 7 changed the interface design. The iPad mini was smaller and lighter. Apple continued improving its products. By 2012, Apple was very profitable. Revenue reached $156 billion. Profit was over $40 billion. Market value reached $500 billion. But people still asked one question. What is the next big product? What will Apple create now? The answer came in 2014. Apple introduced the Apple Watch. It was more than a simple watch. It tracked health and activity. It showed messages and notifications. It also played music and apps. Users could change its appearance. It became a very personal device, something people wore every day. At first, people were not sure. Some critics did not like it. But over time, it became popular. Sales grew very quickly. By 2020, it was number one, the best-selling watch in the world. It even passed famous brands like Rolex and Casio. In 2016, Apple made another change. They removed the headphone jack. Many users were angry at first. They did not understand the decision. But Apple had a new idea. They introduced AirPods, small wireless earphones, simple and easy to use. At first, people laughed at them. They looked unusual and different. But after using them, opinions changed. The experience was very smooth. AirPods became very popular worldwide. They became a style symbol. By 2022, revenue was very high, over $15 billion. Apple also changed its computers. Before they used Intel processors. But Apple wanted more control, so they made their own chips. In 2002, Apple introduced the M1 chip. This was a big risk. Many people were unsure. They worried about performance, but the result was excellent. MacBooks became faster and quieter. Battery life became much longer. Software worked very smoothly. Experts praised the new computers. They called it a major improvement. Apple proved it could innovate again, even without Steve Jobs. Now let's look at growth numbers. Apple continued to grow every year. Revenue and profit increased strongly. Market value reached new levels. By 2018, Apple reached $1 trillion. By 2022, it passed $2 trillion. In 2023, it reached $3 trillion. This was a historic moment. No company had reached this before. Apple became the most valuable company, more valuable than many big brands combined. And it started in a small garage. Today, Apple is part of daily life. People use iPhones every morning. They wear Apple Watch for health. They listen with AirPods. They work on MacBooks and iPads. They watch content on Apple TV. They pay using Apple Pay. They store data in iCloud. Apple is not only a company now. It is a global lifestyle brand. It connects technology and daily life. It shapes how people live. Tim Cook leads in a different way. He is not loud or dramatic. He focuses on long-term strategy. He builds a stable global company. Under Cook, Apple became more global. It became more environmentally focused. It became more inclusive as well. Financial results became even stronger. He did not invent the iPhone, but he scaled it worldwide. He expanded Apple's reach globally. He proved his leadership clearly. This story is very unique. Few companies have such a journey. From a garage to global power, from failure to success again. Apple was close to bankruptcy once. Its founder was removed from the company, but he returned and rebuilt everything. Then the company grew even more. Apple combined many important elements, technology, design, and emotion, together. Branding and storytelling also played roles. Simplicity remained at the center. Steve Jobs is no longer alive, but his ideas are still present. You can feel them in every product, in design, sound, and experience. He once said something important. People who think differently change the world. He believed this deeply, and he proved it. This is the full story of Apple. From a garage to $3 trillion. From a small idea to global impact. From Steve Jobs to the modern world. Now let's look at key lessons. Simple ideas from Apple's journey. Lessons you can use in life and in your own work. Simplicity is very powerful. People prefer clear and simple things. Too many features create confusion. Keep things easy and clean. Consistency builds strong trust. Apple releases products every year. Updates come regularly and predictably. People learn to trust the brand. Emotion matters more than features. Apple sells feelings, not only specs. People remember how they feel, not technical details. Do not fear change. Apple removed old products many times. Even successful ones were replaced. Growth requires bold decisions. Focus on a few things. Do not try to do everything. Do one thing very well, and do it better than others. Control the full experience. Apple controls design and software, also stores and packaging. Everything feels connected. Protect your brand carefully. Do not lower quality for quick gains. Reputation is very important. It takes years to build. Start small but think big. Apple began in a garage. One idea changed everything. Action is more important than size. Apple is more than products. It is an idea and a belief. A belief in simple and bold thinking. A belief in people like you. If you have one strong idea, start. You do not need many ideas. You do not need to be perfect. You need courage to begin. In the end, Apple created belief. Belief in design and creativity. Belief in simple, powerful ideas. And belief in change. If you like this story, subscribe. It is a story about a boy with no shoes and no money. But this boy had a big dream. Later, the whole world knew his name. His name was Charlie Chaplin. It was a very cold winter night in London. The year was 1895. A small child sat alone near a dark street corner. This child was Charlie. He was only 6 years old. The wind was strong. Charlie was very cold and very hungry. His coat was old. It had many holes. His boots were broken. Charlie watched the people in the street. Rich people walked past him in warm clothes. They did not see the small boy. Nobody stopped to ask if he was okay. Nobody gave him a piece of bread. Charlie's life was difficult from the very start. His father was a singer, but he drank too much. He left the family when Charlie was a baby. Charlie's mother was named Hannah. She was also a stage performer. She loved her sons, Charlie and Sydney, very much. Hannah tried her best to earn money. She sang songs in small, noisy theaters, but she was often tired and sad. One night, something bad happened. Hannah was on stage. She started to sing a beautiful song. Suddenly, her voice cracked. She could not sing anymore. The audience started to shout. They threw things at her. Hannah began to cry. She had to leave the stage. Without her voice, she had to stop working. The family had no money for food or rent. They became very poor very quickly. They moved to small, dirty rooms. Sometimes they had no house at all. They had to sleep outside in the rain. Charlie felt very ashamed of his old clothes. Other children at school laughed at him. They called him names. Charlie felt very lonely in those days. When Charlie was 7, his mother became very ill. Her mind was broken because of the stress. Doctors took her to a hospital for people with mental problems. Charlie and his brother Sydney were now alone. They had no parents to help them. The government sent the boys to a workhouse. A workhouse was a terrible place for poor people. The children there had to work from morning until night. They cleaned big floors with cold water. They washed heavy clothes. The food was very bad. Usually they only had thin soup and hard bread. The beds were small and cold. Charlie hated every minute in that place, but he found a secret power inside himself. He realized he could make other children smile. When the boys were sad or crying, Charlie did something funny. He made strange faces. He walked like a clumsy duck. He told little jokes. For a few minutes, the boys stopped crying. They laughed loudly. They forgot about the cold rooms and the hard work. Charlie felt happy when he saw their smiles. He felt important for the first time. Years passed slowly. It was now 1903. Charlie was 14 years old. He was a teenager now. He went to a small theater in London. The manager needed young actors for a new play. Charlie was very nervous. His legs were shaking, but he knew he needed this job to survive. The manager looked at the thin boy. He asked if Charlie could act. Charlie did not say anything. He just started to move. He acted like an old man with a cane. Then he acted like a man who had too much beer. He tripped over his own feet and fell down. The manager started to laugh. He liked the boy's energy. He told Charlie to come back the next day. This was the start of Charlie's real career. He joined a group of funny actors. They traveled all over England together. Charlie learned many things during these trips. He watched the audience closely. He learned how to use his face to tell a story. He learned how to move his body like a dancer. Charlie understood a very important secret. You do not need words to make people laugh. The body can speak better than the mouth. People in every city loved him. He was small, but he was a star on the stage. Life was still not easy. The actors traveled in old, slow trains. They stayed in the cheapest hotels. Sometimes they performed many shows in one day. Charlie was often exhausted, but he never said a bad word. He knew this was his chance to leave the poor streets of London. He worked harder than everyone else. He practiced his movements every night. In 1910, Charlie's life changed forever. It was a gray morning at the docks. Charlie stood on a very large ship. The ship was going across the ocean to America. Charlie felt a little bit scared. He was leaving his home, but he also felt excited. An American theater company invited him to perform in New York. This was a huge opportunity. America was a huge country. People called it the land of dreams. They said anyone could become rich there. Charlie arrived in New York and was surprised. Everything was so big. The buildings touched the sky. The cars were loud. The people were always in a hurry. Charlie felt like a small boy again, but he was ready to show his talent. He traveled across the United States with the actors. They went to Chicago, San Francisco, and many other places. The American people loved Charlie's comedy. They laughed at his silly walks. They loved his big eyes and his fast movements. Then, in 1913, a man named Mack Sennett saw Charlie. Mack was a boss at a movie company. He saw that Charlie was a genius. Mack offered Charlie a job in movies. He promised to pay Charlie $150 every week. Charlie was shocked. It was a huge amount of money. He could buy many shoes and much food with that. But Charlie was also worried. He knew nothing about making films. He only knew the theater stage. He thought for a moment and then said yes. He wanted to try something new. In 1914, Charlie went to a movie studio in Los Angeles. The sun was shining. He saw many cameras and lights. He saw people running everywhere. At first, Charlie felt lost. His first movies were not very good. Acting for a camera is different from acting on a stage. On stage, you must move big. For a camera, you must be more natural. Charlie had to learn a new way of acting. One afternoon, a director told Charlie to go find a funny costume. Charlie went into a room full of clothes. He wanted to create a special character. He found a jacket that was way too small. Then he found pants that were way too big. He put on very large shoes and a tiny hat. He took a thin cane and put on a small black mustache. He looked in a big mirror. A new person was standing there. This was the birth of the Tramp. The character was poor, but he had the heart of a king. He was a gentleman with no money. When Charlie walked onto the movie set, everyone started to laugh. They loved the new look. This character made Charlie Chaplin the most famous man on earth. The Tramp was a special character. In his movies, the Tramp was often hungry. He slept on park benches, but he was always kind. He helped people who were in trouble. He was brave against big, mean men. People all over the world loved him. They saw their own lives in his stories. Everyone knew what it felt like to be poor or lonely. But the Tramp never gave up. He always kept a smile on his face. By 1915, Charlie was very successful. A big movie studio offered him $1,250 every week. That was a lot more money than before. Charlie signed the new contract. He began to direct his own films. He was now the boss. He chose the actors and the stories. He wanted his movies to be perfect. He was not just a comedian now. He was a true artist. Charlie wanted his films to be more than just funny. He wanted to make people feel deep emotions. In 1921, he made a movie called The Kid. It was a story about the Tramp and a little boy. The movie was very funny, but it was also very sad. People laughed at the jokes. Then they cried during the emotional parts. It was a global success. Charlie was now a living legend. In 1919, Charlie did something very brave. He and 3 other famous actors started their own studio. They called it United Artists. They did not want big companies to tell them what to do. They wanted to be free to make art. Charlie could now take as much time as he wanted. He spent a whole year making The Gold Rush in 1925. In that movie, there is a famous scene. The Tramp is so hungry that he eats his own leather shoe. He eats the shoestrings like they are delicious pasta. It was a funny scene, but it also showed how hard life can be. People loved it. The movie became one of the greatest films in history. In 1931, Charlie made City Lights. At that time, movies already had sound. Actors were talking on the screen. But Charlie refused to use sound. He believed that silent acting was more powerful. He was right again. The movie was a masterpiece. The ending of City Lights is one of the saddest and most beautiful moments in cinema. Charlie was now one of the richest men in the world. He had a big house and many friends. The poor boy from the London workhouse was gone. But the world was changing. A new war was coming. Charlie decided to make a political movie. In 1940, he made The Great Dictator. He played a cruel leader who looked like Adolf Hitler. Many people were afraid of this movie. They told Charlie not to make it, but Charlie wanted to speak about freedom. At the end of the film, he gave a long speech. He asked for peace and kindness in the world. The movie was a hit, but it also brought many problems. Some people in the American government did not like Charlie's ideas. They thought he was dangerous. The newspapers started to write bad things about him. They called him a traitor. In 1952, Charlie went to Europe for a vacation. While he was on the ship, the U.S. government told him he could not come back. They took away his visa. Charlie was very hurt and angry. He lived in America for 40 years. He gave them his best work. Now, they were closing the door on him. Charlie moved to a beautiful house in Switzerland. He lived there with his wife and their children. He said he did not need Hollywood anymore. For 20 years, he did not visit America. He was happy in Europe, but he missed his old life. Then, in 1972, everything changed. The Academy Awards invited him back to Los Angeles. Charlie was 83 years old now. He walked onto the stage very slowly. His hair was as white as snow. When the famous actors in the room saw him, they all stood up. They clapped for 12 minutes. It was the longest applause in history. Charlie had tears in his eyes. He said thank you many times. America finally showed its love for him again. Charlie went back to Switzerland. He spent his final years in peace. He was surrounded by a large and loving family. He died on Christmas Day in 1977. He was 88 years old. The whole world felt the loss of a great man. Everyone remembered the tramp and the joy he brought to their lives. Charlie Chaplin's life teaches us a great lesson. It does not matter where you start. You can be poor. You can have no parents. But if you have a dream and work very hard, you can succeed. Charlie turned his sadness into laughter for millions of people. He will always be a legend of the cinema. Thank you for listening to this story. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments if you liked our story. See you in the next video.